Hello everyone, my name is Moji. You're watching a Bitcoin Bubble News channel. I really enjoy Saylor's movies, they always make me feel good. He definitely helped me get started with Bitcoin, even though I was already up and running a little before he did. He had this video in Prague in which he talks about how all of your models have been wrecked. I can kind of understand what he's saying because he's basically saying that Bitcoin is going to change the game, right? So, you can't really go from bows and arrows to guns and nuclear bombs. That's not really projection. Then he kind of says, well, all these models with these statistics and time series, is just kind of a waste of time because it's changed so fundamentally. But then he says, well, I think Bitcoin is going to have a 24% CAGR, which stands for 24% annual growth rate. That is, however, a model. So where did you get 24%? Do you really just point to the sky and say 24%? You're not, though. It's clear that you're looking at facts. You're drawing conclusions from that info. That set of facts is a time series. You're not seeing Bitcoin before. Bitcoin has been around for 15 years, and you're making a prediction based on that past. The power law says that the trend line is going at a rate of 43% to 45% right now. As it turns out, we're also right on the trend line. That's a pretty good guess for your rate of compound growth right now. This week at Bitcoin Frag 2024, Michael Saylor, who is known as the king of Bitcoin, gave the main speech. In his speech, Saylor said that all the models you use to measure Bitcoin will not only not work, but they will also be broken. You can read what he said here. It will destroy all of your models. Everything we learned about politics over 10,000 years, all of these people want to look at time series of historical events when they look backwards. I only see a group of statisticians looking at people from 3,000 years ago who fought in fights with chariots, bows, arrows, camels, and elephants. Then we show up with bombs and planes. They are also testing their models against real data to see how bombs and planes change how they arrange their elephants. Like all the models, it doesn't make sense anymore. You need to throw them all away if you know anything about Bitcoin. When Godzilla comes onto the playground, none of your models are worth anything. All of them are going to be killed. Saylor is basically saying that Bitcoin is such a big deal that there aren't any models that can measure it. Fred Krueger, a famous scientist and Bitcoiner, doesn't agree at all. In his most recent video update for investors, Krueger explained why he thinks the Bitcoin power law model is the only one that will work for Bitcoin. Saylor thinks that Bitcoin will grow at an average rate of 40% per year over the next 10 years, which Krueger points out. After that, it will grow by more than 20%. But this fits very well with the Bitcoin power law model, which says that Bitcoin will be worth $1 million in 10 years. Krueger says that modeling is the only way to get a number for yourself if you want to know how much Bitcoin will grow over the next 10 years. I think the Bitcoin power law is the best model. Before we start the film, I want to make it clear that not all of my viewers are actually subscribers. If you like videos about money, you might want to subscribe or like the video and turn on post alerts. Fred Krueger is going to explain why he thinks Saylor is wrong right now. I really enjoy Saylor's movies, they always make me feel good. He definitely helped me get started with Bitcoin, even though I was already a bit familiar with it. He made this movie in Prague in which he says, again, all your models are destroyed. I can kind of understand what he's saying because he's basically saying that Bitcoin changes the game, right? So, you can't really go from bows and arrows to guns and nuclear bombs. That's not really projection. Then he kind of says, well, all these models with these statistics and time series, is just kind of a waste of time because it's changed so fundamentally. But then he says, well, I think Bitcoin is going to have a 24% CAGR, which stands for 24% annual growth rate. That is, however, a model. So where did you get 24%? Do you really just point to the sky and say 24%? You're not, though. It's clear that you're looking at facts. You're drawing conclusions from that info. That set of facts is a time series. You're not seeing Bitcoin before. Bitcoin has been around for 15 years, and you're making a prediction based on that past. I believe the power law is a more thorough way to look at that. Plus, I want to call attention to Giovanni because he was the first person to notice this. It was something he saw in 2013. In that moment, one of his friends told him, hey, I think this Bitcoin thing is kind of exponential. He replied, no, it's not likely exponential. It's most likely more like a power rule or a power function. And it's not, this is what these things are called. Power laws are what they're called. In other words, it's a power of time and log space. That's why you need to look at the Bitcoin price as well as the log space, time and long space. And if you do, which you can, you'll be able to tell because of how they act. Once you do that, you'll be able to guess the compound yearly growth rate. So, I did this in the most recent post. It's pretty easy math, right? This is kind of like math from high school. Even though I have a PhD in the field, you can go a long way from high school math. So, if you have a power function, the price of Bitcoin is just a times the time raised to the power of B, right? Now the question is, what is B? You can guess B, and B is a pretty good guess. It's around 5.8 to 5.6. Right, it depends on whether you look at it in block time or real time, etc. Let's say the number is 5.8. Also, that sounds a lot like Giovanni's number. Perhaps 5.6 is a better number to use. I'm going to be right in the middle of those. But all of these are the right numbers. Now compare the time at t plus 1 to the time at t divided by t. You'll see that the factorand is no longer there, leaving you with t plus 1 to the power 6 divided by t to the power 6. The number t is then 15 in this case. Bitcoin has been around for 15 years now. In this case, the CAGR is 43%, which is between 43% and 45%. The power law says that the trend line is going at a rate of 43 to 45% right now. As it turns out, we're also right on the trend line. That's a pretty good guess for your rate of compound growth. Your rate of growth right now as of today, things are going to slow down a lot now. It will slow down to 24% in 10 years. And that it will slow down to 17% in 20 years. Once more, if you look ahead 10 years, you end up with 24%. You're getting close to the same amount that Saylor does, right? Because ships who see 24% will move a lot more slowly. He says that the CAGR rate is too low. I agree that is a pretty traditional view, because if you start with a CAGR of 44% and drop it to 24%, you'll probably go higher than 24%. And after that, that kind of CAGR drop keeps going. It will only be 17% in 20 years. But I'd like to make a point of saying that 24% CAGR is 8 times, right? It's 8.5x if you go. Let's say you go from 1.4 to the power of 10. You'll get 8 points, right? That means that putting $1 in will get you $8.50, zero in 10 years. What about getting an average? You should be able to get between 40% and 24% over the next 10 years, right? You won't get 40% because that's how much you get every year, right? Let's say 30%. Also, if I took 1.3, let's say 32%, 1.32 to the power 10, I would get 16x, right? That's about 16 times what you can expect. It's not hard to figure out how much Bitcoin will be worth in 10 years, about $1 million. You can look at this again in 10 to 20 years and you'll probably get another 20%. Let's take a look at that. For the next two, you'll get 16x over the first 10 years and then 6x over the next 10 years. Big jump 16 times in 10 years. Much smaller jump, even less than half. That's only 6 times in 10 years. That's kind of what I've been saying too now is the best time to invest in Bitcoin, right? That's Fred Krueger's newest thoughts on why he thinks the Bitcoin power law plan will be the only one that works. Leave a comment below and join the talk about what you think about the Bitcoin power law model and Michael Saylor's predictions. Guys, it's clear that you're interested in crypto if you're watching this movie. Remember to sign up for our daily 5-minute crypto email if you want to know what's new in the world of